I don't know if you caught the last segment. I was briefly discussing the situation in Venezuela. I think a lot of people might not truly understand what's happening here. So could you give a brief summary about what this disputed territory called Guyana Essequibo is, why Venezuela just declared it the 24th state of their country, and why the U.S. wants to start a new war over that territory?
So when Simón Bolívar launched his war of independence against Spain in the early 19th century, Guyana Essequibo was part of the territory of Venezuela. When Venezuela, I don't know if it seceded, when it was no longer part of the Gran Colombia Confederation in 1830, this was part of its territory. The British, however, saw fit to decide the boundary of their own colony they got from the Dutch called British Guyana. And they decided that that territory was going to cut into what Venezuela had already claimed. So after 1841, Venezuela was contesting this, and it wouldn't be resolved, quote unquote, unfairly, I should add, until the end of the century, where basically a tribunal was convened by the United States, Britain, and Russia, which at the time was a British ally, which said that the territory, Guyana Essequibo, actually belongs to the British, to British Guyana. Fast forward half a century, and British Guyana is going to get independence from Britain. So they go back to the table and they decide at the Geneva Convention of 1966 that going forward, they were going to settle this matter bilaterally. And it was never settled. However, under international law, Guyana Essequibo and its waters were disputed territory. The issue did not raise its significance again until the late or the middle of the 2010s, where it was discovered that there was oil in the Guyana Essequibo region, which led ExxonMobil and others to flock to the region, more or less buy out the government of Guyana, and acquire these unprecedented rights to mine the oil there, basically ripping off the people of Guyana and drilling oil in disputed territory, which is a violation of international law. And they started drilling it. And over the past decade, Venezuela has tried everything they could to get Guyana to come to the table and settle this matter bilaterally, just them two. But Guyana, under pressure by ExxonMobil, has refused. It's insisted that they take the matter to the International Court of Justice, which is in violation of the Geneva Agreement, where they decided they were going to settle it bilaterally. So just recently, the limits of their patience being exhausted, especially with the news that Guyana was inviting the United States to build a military base there, undoubtedly to protect the assets of ExxonMobil, Venezuela decided they've had enough. So they held a referendum to reaffirm their stance on the matter of the dispute that Guyana Essequibo is part of Venezuelan territory. And I believe Maduro has given these oil companies 3 months to leave the premises, and that immediately Venezuelan companies, which, by the way, are by and large state-owned, therefore sovereign, can start drilling there. He's issued an order to give identity cards to the residents of Guyana Essequibo, making them Venezuelan citizens with the full rights, protections afforded by that. And undoubtedly, it's going to be portrayed, and is already being portrayed, as an act of unwarranted aggression. Just like in the case of Russia's SMO in Ukraine, that accusation is devoid of knowledge of the context.
Yeah. So basically, this was Venezuelan land. Then the British Empire used international football politics to steal the land. Then in 2015, they found that there's a lot of oil on this land. Then the U.S. controlled government in Guyana decided that they were going to invite ExxonMobil and the U.S. military down to exploit the land. Venezuela the whole time has been engaged in diplomatic negotiations, and now they've recognized it as part of their territory because the Western states are trying to steal it from right underneath their feet.